Welcome back to Stu Structures. I am Mark Stewart, and I'm here to start a build for a friend of mine, Sparky 107107. So stay tuned and we're going to show you what we're getting into here. So welcome back to Stu Structures. I am Mark Stewart, and we are going to build Sparky's house. When I got the pictures, I don't know what I was expecting. I figured it probably wasn't a square box house, and it's definitely not a square box house. There's a lot of cut up parts into this house, so it's going to be a build that's a little complicated, not extreme. It's something that we'll handle okay. But I'm going to go through the process with you of how I'm going to build this, and we're going to build a nice house for Sparky for his layout. So let's just jump into this. Now first here, I'm just going to show you all the pictures that he sent me to work from. He did a really good job of taking angles of everything. You saw this picture in the beginning of the video, but this is the front of the house, and he gets individual shots of different areas to work from, which sometimes makes it easier to blow up depending on how many pixels are in digital photographs. But you can see in these angle shots that it gives me side shots to get some depth on some side walls and things like that. From this I can get measurements off of all this, all the overhangs, everything, and he did a really good job, and I appreciate that, Sparky. It's hard to work from pictures anyway, but when you have this much detail from pictures, it definitely makes it a lot easier. The front door area, this is a great area to start from, so we'll look at that when we get started measuring here. The other end of the front of the house, the big picture window, the two overhead, and details of the siding. I can tell what kinds of siding is on the house. This end gives me the depth of the overall end of the house. This end shot of the other end of the house, shows me that there's a different siding on the addition that was added later on to the house. The different windows and stuff that are in the house. There's a whole lot of different windows. There's not a standard window in this house. And they even sent some detail shots of stuff like this, which really makes great to work from. But then we start on the back of the house, and the back of the house is just about as cut up as the front of the house was. But you can see the sliding glass doors back here, the little round door and the eave over top. The decking on the back. There's this little structure between the new addition and the old house. But it's just really a very good detail bunch of pictures to put this together from and to build from. It shows me all the little corners and crevices and everything, all the different windows. And this brings us around to the other end of the house where we had to start from. So, with all this information, where do we get started from? And what I'm going to start from is this basic picture of the front of the house. And, there was a lot of detail shots of the house, but with this one picture, I can blow this up to scale, and I'm going to start with the front door, because doors standard are 3 foot wide. Most of them are 6 foot 8 inches tall, so it's 3068. And I'm going to use that as a basic dimension to start this build from. And from there we can, once I know that is blown up to scale, I can start measuring everything else and figure out the rest of the dimensions on the house from there. So like I said, we're going to start with this picture of the front of the house, and I put this on my computer and I blow the screen up, or the picture up on the screen, to where I can get a 3 foot wide reading on the door. And from there I can start to get measurements on everything else. I can measure the width of the garage door, the window off the side of the door, the dormers on top, the whole front panel, the width of the little inset where the front door sets back in. I can get the height of the garage doors. This gives me a whole lot to work with on this. And also, you know, this is board and batten siding, so the spacing between all these boards is exactly the same. So if you get a measurement off of one of these widths of the boards, you can count the boards in the siding on that side of the house and get a measurement overall on this house. Now this, you know, in measuring this, this is probably, you know, 14 inches or so wide. I'm not really sure. So, you know, 14 to 16 inches is what I came up with. So there's a little variance there. So if you're counting boards to do an overall wall, it might mess you up a little bit. But if you measure the overall wall, you can get a, you know, closer dimension on what you're doing once you have this up to scale to work from. Now with the angle shots that he gave me on the front, I can start to get a whole lot of detail. I can tell by how many battens are in this board and batten siding that go back, how deep the dormers are. There's also another picture that shows where the roof lines meet on top too, and that would also help me lay those out. But I can get the overhang depths on the walls, how far the roof comes out past the walls on the dormers. The depth of the walls, you know, over the garage door as well. And I know that roof line goes and meets the flat wall that comes out to the right side of the main door, and I can see that wall here and in another picture also to give me the different depth of how many boards back in that house wall sets back into the front door from that second right hand side of the house. This next shot, you know, just shows another angle of that, but further out the house. And this shows the eaves where the garage has the setback from the first stall to the second stall. And I can figure out the width and the heights of the roof lines there. And gives me a great area to work from for measurements there. In this other shot, you know, this shows better the inset where it sits from the right hand side of the house back into the door, but it also shows the second floor area where the wall goes back and meets. That we could figure out anyway because the roof line on that right hand side of the house goes back and meets the main roof on the main part of the house. So with those, that information, we could figure out how deep these walls are anyway. But you know, here we've got boards to count. We can also look at the decking on the porch. This is a wood porch that sits out on the front of the house. So we know it's of wood construction. We can see how the decking planks and stuff are laid out on the porch. So it's just a lot more information to work with from this one shot. And then this shot of the end of the house, we can get an overall measurement on the end of the house. We can see there's a window on the second story. We can see there's a board between the first story board and batten boards and the second story. Look at the gutter system, the overhang. It's just a lot of good detail in all these pictures. The roof lines where they meet up above. This is just invaluable information when figuring out how to scratch build this structure. And then moving on to the other end of the house, the porch overhang will be the same as what we got off the other end of the front porch, but you can see how the battens tie right into this side of the wall. And when you got an angle like this on a wall and not a direct 90-degree picture to the wall, it's because of the layout of the wall. Your front edge is going to be a different scale than the far end, so you can't really get a measurement of the full length of the wall because it's distorted. So your dimensions, if you measure this wall overall, would be way shorter than what the wall actually is. But in this case, because we know that the amount of spacing in those boards, we can count the batten boards all the way back that wall, and we can get an overall measurement of this wall. And we also know from the other end where the garage insets are back through the wall, we know how wide the other end of the house is. And then the addition was built on to the back end of that, so the width of this end of the house back to where the new addition is similar to the measurements on the other end of the house where all those insets add up as an overall measurement. Now, since all the windows, or at least a lot of them, are different in this house, we can get up close and personal to the windows better in this shot than the next shot to get overall dimensions of the two windows on this house. And we can see the one has, a half circle above the window, and it has mullions, where a lot of the windows in this house are just one pane over one pane windows. You can also see there's a satellite dish on this side of the house. There's a power box on this side of the house. We can look at the roof line and see that there's a vent up on top of the roof from here. And we can see the siding on the new addition of the house is more like T111 siding. And you have a power box and then there are other additional lines coming into the house there, and you can see the gutters on this back end of the house here as well. And here, it's just the back end of that house where that addition comes on back. You can see on the addition that there are no windows or doors. But, from, counting the boards and getting a width on the boards, we can figure out, the depth of the overall addition that was onto the house. And, looking at the front corner of the house, we know the back height of this is the same as that front corner of the house. So we have our height there. And as we turn the corner, there are other pictures to work from to get better. And then, this is just another shot of that same back corner. It gives you a better angle view of the vents up on the roof. And the back wall, it gives you a little more information, but we have a better picture to work from that coming up. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this, but, another good detail shot. Then after we jump the fence and come into the backyard, we have this better shot of that back wall. And from this, we can blow that up to scale, and we know the widths of the T111 siding already. So from there we can count boards and get an overall scale for the wall. And then once we measure our, blow that picture up to that scale, and we can measure the height of the door, the width of the door, the windows up above, the half circle window up above that. That we can just get everything to scale from there and start working on these other walls as well, although we have other pictures of those walls to work from as well. But if we need to revert back to this picture, it gives us a good picture to get measurements on windows and stuff of that, plus the other shots that we have to work from. Then from this next picture, as we turn the corner on that same room, we know the depth of that wall, or the length of the width of that wall, from the other side of the building, because the build out would have been from where the old house was out to that corner. So this side of that build would be the same as the other side of the build. And we can see how many boards out that little tiny one-story room comes out from that. And we can see the door down on the first floor. I'm not sure if, with the furniture setting where it is, I'm not sure if this was actually another sliding glass door, or whether this was a double wide window in that area there. I'll have to blow this up and look a little closer. It's really hard to tell from this. I might have to ask Sparky a question and get some detail on this one. But in any case, you can see how far the deck comes out from that, the 2x2 posts and 2x4, decking, and you can see how all that's put together. And we start to see the one-story room that comes off to the right-hand side of that addition, and the original, basic structure of the house up above with the one window and the gutters, another view of the vent pipes up above as well. And then we come on out to where, we have this picture to work from more for that one-story building. And we can see the siding on this was the same as the original structure, so it was probably part of the original structure when it was built. And I don't know if this went all the way across the back of that end of the house or not, but right now it ends where the addition was put onto the house. And so we know that the siding on this is the same as the main structure. The windows, we can look at those. We can see where that one-story roof comes off that covered the original porch on the back side of the rest of the house. It's just a whole bunch of information for the end of this house. We'll see where the deck ends off of that same end of that one-story structure there. We can see where posts begin that hold up that little porch roof on the end. There's just tons of detail in this one little end shot to work from. In this last shot of the house, we can see, you know, we're ending up this wall to the far right, which meets the end of that garage stall, and brings us completely around to the end of the building. But here we can see the width of where the second story sticks out beyond the one-story building. So with that and the one-story building, it gives us all the dimensions, you know, to work from for the whole back side of the house. So we know how wide the addition was onto the back. Now we know how wide the one-story building is, the second-story floor up there, and we know how wide this end structure works out too, and those dimensions give us the full width of the front of the house. So if you're measuring all these and something doesn't work out right, then you just have to play with some dimensions, 1 foot here, 2 foot there, or something, to get these overall dimensions to work out to the same dimensions as the front of the house width. And the same with the ends, you know, all those setbacks on the end of the house on one end would equal the same dimension as the original house wall on the other end of the house. And sometimes when you're going through these and working from pictures like this, you know, it comes down to laying it out on paper. It doesn't all match up perfectly when you come down to the last corner. So you just gotta kind of go back, and you gotta just play with a little here, a little there, and give and take until everything works out right on paper. And you want to make sure all these work out before you start building, because you don't want to just go start cutting a bunch of wood for walls and get down to your last corner and nothing matches up. And then you've wasted wood. You know, and when you go buying this pre-made siding and stuff, it's not really expensive, but you know, I guess I'll use this word, I'm cheap or frugal, whatever, and I don't like wasting wood or anything. I like having as little done for scrap at the end of a project as I can have, because it leaves me good material to build another structure with later on. So, you know, here we are at the last corner of the house. Now we need to put it all on paper and figure out a footprint for this wall and make sure all our dimensions are going to work out to the way it needs to be. So there you have the basic layout of Sparky's house. You know, this is kind of a complicated build, like I said before. I mean, it's not that hard. It's just going to take a little more time to figure out all the angles and the roof lines and the dormers and, you know, everything that's involved in this. There's just a lot of cut up areas. Like I said in the beginning, it's really just not a square cube house. But anyway, I am looking forward to this. We're getting a good start on it, and in the next video we'll go into starting to cut some of the walls and stuff. You know, if you have questions about how I get some of my measurements and things, leave comments below and ask me questions. I always answer most all the comments that come up on my shows. I do appreciate the comments. But sometimes I go through this and, you know, it's something that seems like it's self-explanatory to me. Maybe some of you all out there just are wondering, well, how did he do that, or whatever. And you know, I'd be glad to explain things that maybe I'm overlooking in these videos if you need information on how to and that type of thing, because that's what this is all about, is the sharing of information. I'm hoping to make it easier for you guys out there to build structures that you want to make for your model railroads and do some scratch building. So anyway, thank you for coming back and sharing this time with me. I do appreciate it. Share this video material with other people in the hobby, and subscribe to my channel if you're not already, and subscribe to Sparky 107's channel as well. And you know, next week we'll start cutting walls and putting this house together. So until then, drag out your trains, have a good time, and happy model railroading.